So let's jump into the pricing calculator. This is where all the magic happens, and it's a really great place to really talk about this. So Microsoft publishes this tool for free. You just do a Google search for Azure Pricing Calculator. It's a public site. You can come in here and look at the things you're working with. But the big details that we're going to talk about today is a lot of people's costs in Azure comes from running servers in Azure. That's the majority of people's costs for a lot of tenants. They've taken 20, 30, 2 or 300, however many servers, and moved them to the cloud. And Microsoft charges for those resources, but it's also the easiest place to go save money. And I'm going to walk you through all the variables here so that you have a fighting chance to understand how all these pricing and discount functionalities work. And we're happy to walk you through this in person. We have some assessments we can do. So please reach out as this is something you want to learn more about. But let's dig in. So here in the pricing calculator, we're looking at a virtual machine pricing. And so I'm going to go through each line and talk about how it impacts the pricing. The first one is the region does actually impact the pricing. So you can see here, this 4-core, 16 gig of RAM VM, D4S V5. This might be a common server size for running maybe an application server or some sort of server running a tool set in your network in your environment. It's 37.6 cents an hour. But if we switch regions, you'll see that that price goes up. It's 41.4 cents per hour in West Central US. East US is 37. So it does matter what region you're in, where that'll impact your pricing by 5-10%. Often that's something you can't really change because you've picked your region, you have your reasons, you want it nearby, or you have other infrastructure in that region. So oftentimes that only matters when creating new environments, but it is worth noting. The other thing you'll find out with different regions is that some regions don't have availability for some of the sizes you need, or they don't have any of them. Some of the VM sizes like the N series with the video cards are only available in some regions. So it's important to pay attention to that. As we talked about last week, the cost of the server operating system, a Windows server, is a big part of the cost. And we're going to dig into how that pricing can be modified and how you can address that. So we'll come back to that. You can see in the pricing here, you can add SQL Server. If you're going to run SQL Server, that adds quite a bit of cost, and we can review that. SQL's great in Azure. It's a great place to run it. There's some real advantages to running SQL there, but we're going to talk about that as a separate topic. Most of the time we're doing standard. Basic is just some very basic VMs. Most of the time people are running standard tier. And then you can pick your different families. There's all sorts of families of VMs. But most of the families of VMs have these same cost-saving measures that we're showing you right here. And I'm actually going to bump this up to a bigger VM. We're going to go back to our DS v6. Let's go v6. Let's go brand new, or even cheaper. And we're going to go kind of a big VM, 32 cores, 128 gigs, because I want to kind of show you where the cost savings are. Maybe that's too big. $3,000 a month is a little expensive. So let's go here. $1,100 a month. This is a nice VM, 16 cores, 64 gigs of RAM. You could run a decent database or that sort of thing on this. This is a pretty powerful server. Sometimes people need those. It's running some application or a heavy duty application. But you'll see that these savings are in percentage. So you can apply this across the board to any size VM. We go back down to a 8-core 32 gig, it's $500 a month. The percentages stay the same. So let's talk through the cost savings options here. The biggest one Microsoft wants from you is they want commitment on you spending money with them. And they'll give you a healthy discount. If you know that VM is going to be around for a year, we can add a reservation, and that takes 38% of the cost off right there with that one choice. We go with the 3-year reservation, say, man, I'll commit to paying for this VM for 3 years. They pull a full 61% off. Now, you'll notice that the number over here on the right-hand side, which is your total cost, didn't go down by 30% or 60%. That's 38 to 60% off of the compute cost. So this 294 goes down to 182, goes down to 114. So that's just impacting the compute cost, the cost for the hardware running the VM. We don't do a lot of savings plan because they tend to be lower discounts than reservations. You can see 31 versus 38 and 54 versus 61. it's often a better deal to go get your reservations and ignore the savings plan. Savings plan is a little bit more like an old enterprise agreement where you're committing to a certain amount of spend across your entire environment rather than on per VM size. I think there's more value in getting more specific about the VMs you're pricing. So oftentimes we recommend people that if they have VMs they know are going to be around, that we just assume at least a minimum 1 year. Nice thing about the reservations is if you have multiple servers in the same size. So let's say you've got a dozen Azure Virtual Desktop servers that are all the same size. You can choose to buy 10 reservations, but have 12 servers. And it'll apply to any of the 10 servers that are running out of the 12 at any one time, which means you can add and remove and change servers, but still maintain that reservations discount on those sizes. So there's value in kind of thinking of it in kind of the low watermark or the low bathtub ring, and of like, what's the minimum number of VMs of that size you think you'll have around for a year? Go ahead and pay for the reservation for those. And then you get that discount across the board. There's even some flexibility where I could buy a reservation for this 8-core 32 gig of RAM VM. But as long as I stay in the family, if I need to make that server bigger at some point, I can double the size of that VM and go to 16-core and 64 gigs of RAM. And that reservation I paid on the smaller side will actually apply to 50% of the cost of the bigger VM. So there's some real value in staying within specific families as well. The next lever we can pull on is this Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. And I'm going to show you something interesting. So right now, if we turn on Azure Hybrid Benefit, so let's turn off our reservation and just go if we're paying monthly. That's a $562 VM. We figured out we could save, about $110 if we were turned on reservation. Pretty valuable. But often the bigger saving is in hybrid use benefit. So I'm going to click this box and say, yes, we're going to activate Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. Now, in that case, it drops the cost by $270 a month. That's a big deal. That's more than half the price of the VM. $562, it's going to drop it by $270. That's over half, or right around half. And between the two, if we turn on 1-year reserved instance, we've now taken a $560 VM and we're running it at $182 a month. That's really substantial savings. And you do that across 20, 30, or 200 or 300 VMs, you can really find a lot of cost savings just by going through and being proactive with these things. Now, the way hybrid use benefit works is you're going to pay $30 a month or $360 a year, or you can buy it up front as a $950 server perpetual license. You're buying a license for that server and saying, Microsoft, I'll pay for that server license upfront for a year or 3 years or indefinitely. And then they don't include the cost of the Windows with the VM. And it's the single biggest way you can save money on VMs in Azure. So big value there. Very important to go through and understand where that applies. There are a couple catches on the hybrid use benefit. Number one, it needs to be on a server operating system. So there is no hybrid use benefit required for AVD, for example. If you're running Azure Virtual Desktop on Windows 11, there is no server operating system to pay for, and Azure does not bill you for the OS. That's included in your Business Premium or E3 or E5 license. And so we don't want to do hybrid use benefit for VMs that are running desktop OSs like AVD. If you're running Linux, don't worry about Azure hybrid use benefit. That cost is not included in the cost of the VM, as you can see here. The other variable that can come into this is if you are running some of the smaller VMs. So like, let's say you're running a BS series, a B series. These are the burstable, highly cost-effective VMs. You can see here that even on a bigger B series, like a 12-core 48 gig of RAM, the benefit of turning hybrid use benefit $399 to $364 is barely more than the cost of the license at $30 a month approximately for a Windows server. And if we go to a smaller one, it's definitely not enough of a cost savings to make a difference. So it is important that you pay attention to where you use hybrid use benefit. But on the B series, there is still value in reservation. So that $132 VM becomes an $82 VM on a 1-year reservation. So there's a lot of complexity here, and it's overwhelming at first, especially if you've not played with it. If you know what you're doing, you can move into an environment and really quickly understand the opportunities to save money and to move things around.